It is a very painful drift to have a leader who is so callous that innocent lives sacrificed mean very little to him. The blood of those who were killed by Ruto should not be allowed to go for nothing. It was much, much more difficult to defeat Kanu than it's going to be to defeat Ruto. Ruto lied to Kenyans that on his watch there will be no abductions and mysterious deaths. On his watch it has become worse. It started with the abduction of Jazz Rai, whose main crime is that he had lodged a case in court to dispute the award of Mumia's sugar factory to a company in which Ruto had interest and Rai's own younger brother had interest. And Ruto abducted him and forced him to withdraw the case in court. This is the first time that that kind of impunity has been shown towards a serious senior investor in this country's history. Ruto was among the leaders who resisted constitutional change up to the end. But when a democratic progressive constitution gives power to an undemocrat with an appetite that is larger than his brain, the consequence is all the time eroding in practice that which the people fought for. When you see the growing arrogance of our president against his own people, we're not his employees. We don't eat at his home. Ruto must find a miracle solution. Otherwise, his government will unravel. If he is not listening to this, he is either mad, unreasonable, or possibly stupid. The year 2024, the main thing about 2024 is that we're happy it's coming to an end. That broadly across the board, Kenyans have been very, very disappointed by economic management or mismanagement, by political mismanagement, the growth of impunity and arrogance by those who wield instruments of state, the violent suppression of a popular uprising by Gen Zs, the attempts to co-opt some key leaders from within the ranks of the opposition, to reduce the ranks of those who are holding government to account, the laguna on taxation policies, how it relates to actual national economic interest. All these are challenges that are not addressed properly. Looking back on economic matters, for example, some of us have been saying for a long time, in a time of recession, you can never increase taxation. The most rational thing to do when there's a recession in a country is to look for a stimulus, to help business, to help employers, to create more opportunity, to soften the burden and the pressure on their incomes in order for them to reinvest in growth. What we have seen is government driving mainstream employers their backs against the wall. Consequences, the flight of capital. You see manufacturers relocating to Tanzania and Uganda to manufacture there and under the common market, export duty-free to Kenya. That means we are exporting jobs to neighboring countries. And you ask a government which has no clue about what it's doing, it tells you, oh, we're creating jobs for Kenyans abroad, we're sending them to Middle East. Kenyans have been going to Middle East from before. They were not sent there by the government. The last time we saw a government sending them there is the Sultanate of Zanzibar sending slaves to the Middle East for the same kind of things they are sending them to do now. But that's for another day. What we have seen most, unfortunately, is a proliferation of formal and informal taxes, which businesses are hurting. Young entrepreneurs are hurting. I've been telling those who are ready to listen the following thing. That democracy is a system of government which only markets one thing, hope. That democratically you are elected by people who believe that when you take power, their life situation will become better than it was before. That their children will end up in better circumstances than their parents. But when you see in a country children growing up becoming adults, and they're guaranteed to die poorer than their parents. And the parents have ended up poorer than their grandparents. The basis of the democratic contract is under threat. If democracy does not give me hope for a better future for my children, the conditions for me giving taxes to the state are breached. And that in some countries has led to very undemocratic changes of government, and people say anything is better than this. That's one thing that Kenyans should know. The second thing, we fought for national renewal with one of the most progressive constitutions on the African continent. Ruto was among the leaders who resisted constitutional change up to the end, but he has been a major beneficiary of that new constitutional order. But when a democratic progressive constitution gives power to an undemocrat with an appetite that is larger than his brain, the consequence is all the time eroding in practice that which the people fought for. When you see the growing arrogance of our president against his own people, we're not his employees. We don't eat at his home. And you listen to him, the insults. You remember, I am going to have all the livestock in Kenya vaccinated. If you don't agree with me, you are mad, unreasonable, or possibly stupid. Now you should tell Ruto, if the Kenya Veterinary Association is telling you that there has never been and there will never be any need for a vaccine that vaccinates all animals for all sicknesses, that when there are episodic challenges, there is a controlled vaccination in areas quarantined so as not to spread the problem, and that the professionals in the veterinary service are saying you are wrong, and the economists are telling him with the 4 billion shillings you want to spend, there are better things you can do for the livestock industry. And citizens are telling him, we are not trusting you with your thinking about what you want to do to animals. If he is not listening to this, he is either mad.
Okay, just on that same topic. Mheshimiwa, do you think there's malice in all this, the vaccination push and all that?
I do not want to speculate about the reasons Ruto has. But there are very many things Ruto has come up with which are stillborn. The Adani project, the housing project, the Shisha. He has got a negative Midas touch. Everything he touches starts into cow down. I don't see any Ruto initiative that has been positive for this country. Now, the most important thing in public leadership is that once in a while you get some opinions from some people and you tend to think that they are good ideas. But if you have gone to school enough, you know that you have no monopoly of common sense or good thinking. You try to listen to others. If the professionals in your own country are telling you this is wrong, economists have told him you do not increase taxes when we are in recession. You do not proliferate lies as a form of governance because it takes a very short time for everybody to see that you are lying. And you have no hiding place when Kenyans elaborate all the lies you have given. If you cannot see this, you have a major challenge for getting credibility as a governor of a country. But then there's a number of other things that I wanted to go back to. A steady disruption of the education system with impunity. Attempts to be punitive when people tell you that your attempts to transform the financing of higher education is not working. The failure to honor statutory obligations to give resources necessary to develop government institutions. Now county government employees going for months without salaries. Tottering on the brink of default on both domestic and international debt. Ruto must find a miracle solution. Otherwise, his government will unravel when he defaults in the coming year. And Kenyans have not known what a default is like. when government starts negotiating with you about how much of your own money you can withdraw from the bank. But he has brought us to this state. He wasted a crisis. When there's a crisis with Gen Z, he should have been able to call for public dialogue to say, we're embarked upon a project we cannot afford. Let's tighten our belts. On my end, I will reduce the theft that has been so displayed by those close to me as part of a sacrifice of effort to reach the nation halfway. Let us reduce down the cost of government. There is no way a poor country like Kenya can afford the structure of government that we have today, even without the leakages that we're seeing today. But these are conversations that have been brought to the fore in the midst of the crisis which was highlighted by the Gen Z uprising. But that crisis opportunity was wasted. Instead, he looked for band-aid, get some support from Raila, look to Uhuru to give you some of his friends who come into government so that you temporarily look like you are gaining back credibility kwa Mrema. These are band-aid aspirant solutions to a fundamental ailment to the body politic, and they will unravel in due course.
So in the wake of all these, Mheshimiwa, now that he has also roped in the former president, do you think President Ruto has a chance to reclaim or maybe reinvent himself in the coming year, moving towards 2027?
I don't think Ruto has roped in Uhuru. Uhuru has talked with Ruto and offered some of his confidence to be given public positions. We don't yet know what are the terms of that engagement, and I'm not usually in the business of speculation. But my sense is this: roping in prominent persons from the opposition may reduce the number of voices which are telling you the truth, but does not kill the truth. I don't see how Kabogo joining government is going to address the issue of the public deficit. I don't see how the declining confidence and cost and competitiveness of manufacturing in Kenya is going to be changed by the appointment of the new trade and investment minister, unless you address the fundamentals of the burden of corruption, the burden of excessive taxation, the burden of bureaucracy, and very importantly, the cost of capital because of the government raiding domestic money markets and making it virtually impossible for legitimate business to take capital out of the banks to grow business. Unless you address these things, who you are dealing with and visiting at night and who you appoint as minister is not going to be the magic wand.
Talk of town now is that Mheshimiwa, 2025 is going to be a defining year, in that 2025 will define 2027, Mheshimiwa. And so far we've seen various alignments, we've seen various persons declare interest, maybe because they've noticed or they've seen the vulnerability in the government, the current government administration. According to from where you sit, Mheshimiwa, is 2025 going to be a defining moment, and will it be now clear that maybe President Ruto has lost it, and I don't know what you have to say about that.
I think it is clear that President Ruto has lost it in 2024. What the alternative forces need to do is slow down on declarations of individual ambitions, everybody wanting to become president, everyone setting out exploratory things. At this stage, what is necessary is not so much promote individual brands, but say, we have seen the limits of solo efforts. If Gen Zs could be so brutally disrupted before they re-emerge in the political struggle, we need intergenerational engagement. This is the time for progressive nationalist politicians, regardless of their ages, to say, we have a national challenge and a national responsibility, which is larger than our individual ambitions. Don't overdevelop the individual ambition. Let us find the glue that keeps the anti-Ruto forces together and at an appropriate time we can internally say, this is space with a lot of opportunities. We cannot all be president. Let us see how we now choose the captain of this boat. Let us have the other engineers, the different positions on the National Liberation Force that can then coalesce and complement the efforts of the different individuals and age categories and groups and political parties into one force that sends Ruto home.
Is it doable, Mheshimiwa? Because
I have been part of a struggle that sent Kanu home. Kanu was much more entrenched, had much more a monopoly of instruments of communication and mobilization, and had been much more successful in starving alternative forces, but we send it packing. In the context of foresight and the benefit of hindsight, I say it was much more difficult to defeat Kanu than it's going to be to defeat Ruto.
Yes, Mheshimiwa, what can you comment about abductions and killing during Gen Z's protest?
No, not just during the Gen Z protests. Ruto lied to Kenyans that on his watch there will be no abductions and mysterious deaths. On his watch it has become worse. It is not just the Gen Z abductions. It started with the abduction of Jazz Rai, whose main crime is that he had lodged a case in court to dispute the award of Mumia's sugar factory to a company in which Ruto had interest and Rai's own younger brother had interest. And Ruto abducted him and forced him to withdraw the case in court. This is the first time that that kind of impunity has been shown towards a serious senior investor in this country's history. So that is one. Two, there were the boys in Kondele who were followed home after demonstrations, taken from their homes, and their bodies later on found. The Gen Z focus is because it had much more national and international media, but it was just part of a growing sequence of impunity and state crime against the citizens. It is a very painful drift to have a leader who is so callous that innocent lives sacrificed mean very little to him. But some of us who learned through the struggle we've had remind Kenyans that the blood of those who were killed by Ruto should not be allowed to go for nothing. That in their honor and in their memory, we must say, how can we organize and mobilize better? How can we be our brothers' keepers? How can we keep the spirit alive? And I think there's a challenge that we have to address very collectively between the progressive social media, progressive, independent, nationalist public media, the legacy media, and other platforms of social mobilization at our disposal in the coming period.
Then I have another question concerning the government. Do you think that government is honest?
Government does not think. Individuals in government do. Statements by Ruto have been proved to be 90%. I think Ruto is a pathological liar. You know, even when two things, this cup is white and Ruto sees it white and he can say this cup is black without any benefit from that lie. It's just like it's cerebral. So it has hurt government so much that even when he promises to do things that seem to be reasonable and right, the public is skeptical because of his track record. He's so easily tempted by the desire to make lies. Like that lie that for years now we are selling milk at 50,000 shillings a liter.